Good morning, y'all. Hope you're doing well today. So it's not officially morning anymore, but it still feels like it to me. So I'm trying actually to cut my caffeine back. I actually saw this really interesting video, and I may drop a link for you in the description, but it was an interview with this guy, and honestly I watched part of it early this morning. I don't remember like who he is, if he's a doctor or whatever, but he was talking about the effects of caffeine on the brain and how it restricts blood flow, and that good blood flow is just crucial for brain health. And he was talking about all these different things and how they affect brain function. And specifically, I'm laughing. I'm gonna tell you why in a minute. I'm gonna tell you why, because it's really not funny, the topic of the discussion here in this video. But he was talking about all these different things that impact brain health and how it can result in dementia. And I'm sitting here thinking, I tick all these boxes. That was what was funny to me, because I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there's times when it's almost like you can feel your brain like freezing up, and it's a struggle just to string words together. Sometimes I deal with that, and so I'm trying to be conscious of how much caffeine I drink, and it's, when you're used to it, it's tough. It's almost like you need it to get the brain juices flowing, right? But then it's working against you too, on the other hand. So it's kind of like a, what do they call that, a catch 24? I don't remember what it's called, but you know what I'm saying. So one of the other aspects is loneliness, that isolation and loneliness can also affect your brain health. And I'm thinking, yeah, when you find yourself in a bad situation, in an environment, in a social group, in a relationship, whatever, that's bad for you, and you get out of it and you start evaluating all of your connections, you start to kind of withdraw, and it can put you in that place. So if you're just loading up on caffeine and you're spending a lot of time alone, not really good. And it's funny because when you know, adults need adult conversation. Children are awesome and wonderful, but it's one of those things where I catch myself, and I did this today. I was thinking about sharing a joke with you all, but it's like a kid joke. And I was going to say, you know, it's like my daughter loves knock-knock jokes right now. So it's like, knock-knock, who's there? And it's Orange. Orange who? Orange, you glad it's Friday? It's like, so there's a lot of indicators that, okay, you know, I really do need to socialize a bit more, or I really do need to cut my caffeine back. And there's all these different risk factors. I'm going to share that with you, because I think that physical health is certainly very, very important, right? We talk a lot here about spiritual and emotional health, psychological health, but your bodily health is crucial. If you don't have that, I mean, that houses everything, right? That's our home. That's where we live. So yes, bodily health is very, very important. But yes, so I hope you're doing well. And I'm actually excited about the message today, because when it came together for me, it's one of those things where just for my own entertainment, I like to investigate a lot of different topics that are seemingly unrelated, and then there's different points that stick with me for whatever reason, and then later the dots connect and create like this one big picture or message that gives me meaning, and all the pieces came from all these different areas. So I thought that was, you know, kind of cool to see how that works. You know, I feel like that's God, you know, working some magic there to help us grow, learn and grow. So I think I'm going to call this video the big picture. Okay, so I was reminded of I'm probably going to date myself here, but when I was a kid, people used to say, you know, don't diss me, you know what I mean, like don't be dissing me. And so I was thinking, I wonder what that really means. Is it disrespect? Is it dismiss? Is it, you know, what is it? And so I looked it up, and the first answer on Google was disrespect, right? It's short for disrespect, but I thought, okay, I'm going to play on this for fun, right? So I thought this might be something really simple for us to keep in our mind as part of our detection system as we're navigating this reality, right? For what to avoid. And so just how to refine our discernment, essentially, okay? So if you take DIS, DIS, let's turn that into something useful, okay? Flipping it to the positive, right? So we're going to take the first letters here, DIS, and we're going to say D for distractions, I for ignorance, and S for substitutes, okay? And these are all kind of negative words with negative connotations, but they're going to be used for a positive result to keep us safe and to keep us in line with on our path, right? The narrow way, so that we don't get entangled with something that's meant to bring us down and exploit us or take advantage of us, okay? So let's dive into this today. I looked up DIS on the online etymology dictionary, and it's described as a word-forming element of Latin origin, and it means opposite of, apart or away, or lack of. So I thought that was really interesting, right? And so that got me to thinking about the lack mindset and how essentially it's like, thinking about all this, it means like the emptying of something, right? Emptying, taking away, keeping apart, creating lack, right? Dis. So now, as an older, wiser adult, we can think to ourselves, like if you're thinking, don't be dissing me in your mind, right? You're thinking, don't be creating this lack mindset in my proximity in my environment and expecting me to hook into that. Don't be bringing me down, with your low vibrations, right? So it really is like a spiritual or an internal thing, an energetic type thing, when you think about the lack mindset. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, the only way a lack mindset can be achieved is by luring, I hate that word, I can't say it, luring our focus, right, away, taking away this, right, away from being in here, being aligned with our inner guiding light, and trying to lure our focus to the external, out here. Okay, so then now your focus is placed externally, you're lacking that on the inside. And so I stumbled on the topic of alchemy, and I actually went to the bookstore yesterday, and it was really interesting. And I prefer old used bookstores, but there's not a lot around here. There's really not any around here like there used to be. And it's been so sad to watch them go out of business. But so I went to this major chain store. It's Barnes & Noble, and I thought, I'm just gonna look. I'm just gonna look and see if they have anything of interest. And they did, and I bought some. And I'll probably be sharing some of that with you in the future, because I'm really excited about what I got. But in flipping through one of my books, it's with regards to the emerald tablets, and I know nothing about this, right? But I stumbled on some information that piqued my interest, and so I went and Googled it, and it kind of led me down this path of stumbling onto alchemy, which is really interesting because it explains the philosophy behind, or the meaning behind, all this old symbolism from ancient cultures. It's like stuff that just, you see it repeated in their art, in their architecture, in their books, and in their belief systems. You see all this symbolism repeated everywhere, just remnants of some kind of overarching belief system from these ancient cultures, but we just have bits and pieces. So we kind of have to guess at it. And it drives me crazy. I love mysteries, but it kind of drives you crazy at the same time. It's like you want to figure it out. Like, whatever this was, because it was repeated everywhere, it was clearly a big part of their lives. And you're just curious about it, you know, because it's foreign to our modern times, you know. So anytime I can stumble on something that kind of gives me insights into just the way humanity operated in the past, it's always interesting to me. So alchemy kind of serves that purpose. And it has to do with well, there's a lot to it. It's almost like, this is my first impression, okay? So just know it may be wrong, but my first impression of it is that it relates to doing things in our physical reality, like symbolically with different ingredients, or like stones, rocks, and metals, and chemicals, and elements from the earth and stuff like that, working with all this to help connect dots inside of us for our personal growth. And it can certainly be viewed, it seems like it was used for like spiritual elevation, you know what I'm saying, like a spiritual journey. And so that's just a basis first impression explanation for you right there, okay? But it was really interesting. And so I stumbled on this video about it, and I was just kind of really absorbed in it, because it was just showing all these old pictures and illustrations and symbols from the past, and explaining it through the lens of alchemy. And I was just really focused in, and I thought, let me check the comments, because you can always learn from comments too, you know. And there was this one that really caught my attention. It was some Bible verses, and I want to share that with you, okay? So, because in the video they were making connections between Jesus and Hermes, right? Or Hermes, however you want to say it. Hermes, I don't know, this Greek mythological figure, okay? And you can see the similarities with regards to the symbolism, you know, of lambs, and you'll just have to look into it yourself. There's a whole lot to it, but it was really interesting. And I know that there are parallels between Christianity and paganism and things like this. I know that there are. I don't personally believe that disqualifies Christianity whatsoever. That's my personal belief. I think that a lot of the principles between different religions and spiritual belief systems are very similar. The paradigms are very similar. And so I don't think that disqualifies one or the other. But I do want to share with you this quote, because it really caught my attention, and this was in a comment on this video, okay? So this is from Deuteronomy, and this is chapter, hold up, yeah, turn the page, chapter 32, and I'm going to read to you it's going to be verse 31. Now before this, what's being described here is a nation void of counsel. Okay, this is in verse 28. It says, neither is there any understanding in them. So it's in reference to people who are deceived. Okay, and they're in the dark. They're navigating in the dark, and there's no guidance there. Okay, and we know that the Holy Spirit, through a Christian lens, that inner guiding light, that's what it does. It guides us. There's counsel there. Okay, so this is talking about a nation of people a lot of people who were just walking blindly. Okay, that's what it's in reference to. This was a comment on this video about alchemy. Okay, it says, for their rock, I'm reminded of Jesus saying, your Father, yours, not mine, mine's here, yours is there. You know, I'm reminded of that. But it says, for their rock is not as our rock, and their rock is a lower R. And then when it says it's not as our rock, which is a capital R, significant. You know what I mean? There's some symbolism right there. Even our enemies themselves being judges. It's almost like they're trying to make themselves godlike in that manner by having the authority to judge. You see what I'm saying? For their vine is the vine of Sodom and of the fields of Gomorrah, which God destroyed because of their wickedness, right? Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. So I looked up gall, which means basically something that tastes sour, or is toxic, like a toxic substance, or it can even symbolize misfortune. So it says, their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons and the cruel venom of asps. Or asps, I don't know, ASPS. And I looked that up too, which back during this time period is symbolic of cobras, right? A cobra, so snake venom. And so it says, is not this laid up in store with me and sealed up among my treasures? Which that part I didn't really get, but then I went down to the next verse and I was like, okay, I think I see what it's saying, and I'm going to let you get your own meaning from it. But the next verse is 35, says, to me belongeth vengeance and recompense, right? Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. So, just important. I just wanted to share that with you. And I'll let you, I'll let you connect dots, okay? So, let's remember that the Bible also tells us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So, you know, I really like the hero's journey, the concept of the hero's journey, and myths and folklore, the lessons that are in there, that are represented in those stories. I like it because it's all about restoring the internal, this internal connection, right? So the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? So if we think about this in 3 stages, like stealing is the first stage, it's really interesting to think of it this way. And then the second stage is to kill, and the third is to destroy. So, you know, we experienced the first stage. We experienced the theft of our inner life force, or the spiritual energy, right? Or the attempted theft, depending on the degree that you feel like resonates with your experience. And some of us felt like we were knocking at the door on number 2, which was to kill, you know, that was about to be it for us. It felt like we were at death's door at some point. And a lot of people are not going to understand this, and that's okay. They don't have to. We don't need that validation. We know what we know what we experienced, and that's all that matters, you know? So, yeah, this lecture, going back, just touching back on this, that I was listening to on YouTube about alchemy, it was all about alchemical symbolism, and throughout history they would put pillars at crossroads, and how those represented safety for our journey, and people would anoint them with oil, right? And that at some point I think they referenced that oil representing the life force inside, right? So a central theme in this video I was watching was Hermes. And I guess the full name is Hermes Mercury, which means the messenger, right? He was symbolic of the messenger. And so I feel like my understanding is he supposedly represents like this spiritual helper on our journey, which, if you remember in the hero's journey, this pattern that we can see in a lot of different folklore, fairy tales, and myth, that's a stage that's commonly represented on the journey, the hero's journey, where the spirit guide joins the hero on their journey to help them across. Typically this happens in the underworld, right? And I believe Hermes is said to have come from the underworld, or to go back and forth or something. So it's really interesting, something you can research if you have interest. And there are similarities to Jesus when you're looking at personifying qualities and aspects of of a spiritual figure, okay, and the symbolism there. So also Hermes comes from Hermeneus, which means the interpreter. So that's closely aligned with discernment, which comes from where? The Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is said to guide us, to be what is inside, what resides inside of us, to lead and guide us, right? And help us to discern what to do in any given situation. So all this reminded me of the personification aspect of oneself, right? Of the psyche, of one person's psyche as we mature and learn and grow. All this just reminded me of that. And it just got me to wondering about these ancient cultures, if they just made this such a huge part of their culture because their belief system was so strongly rooted in personifying stages of personal growth and spiritual growth. Maybe that's what we're looking at here, what we now have access to just in story form, which is rare even. But then again, if you look at movies, it's like, okay, now I see it. That's the modern version, I feel like. So interesting. But essentially, I feel like this personification of this character here is like representing our inner guiding light. And you can always get insights from old cultures and philosophies, and they just offer you different perspectives, you know what I mean? But ultimately, here's the kicker. Here's where we're starting to get back on track here with why all this matters, right? Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, why did big truths that have or seem to have had a very important, like paramount even role in our personal growth, why did they have to be hidden in story form and symbolism? Why not just outright, talk about it? Why did it have to be so symbolized through art and story? And my conclusion is because ignorance is a tool of the darkness. Okay, but again, if we know that God uses all things for the good of those who love Him, then what would this benefit be? We've talked about this before, to test our hearts. Okay, so the enemy wants to keep us ignorant, which is part of that right? Distractions, ignorance, and substitutes. We're going to go over all these, but right now we're talking about the ignorance piece. And we see this because it has to be hidden in art and symbols and stories and fiction and stuff. You see what I'm saying? So keeping us ignorant is a tactic to keep us disempowered, powerless, disconnected from the truth inside that's God-given, right? But it's ultimately beneficial because God's always going to have the upper hand. See, God's always going to come out on top. So He's going to use this to our benefit to test our hearts. So it's like, okay, so you love me, huh? Show me. God's like, prove it, And we're told that wisdom is the principal thing, right? So we are told to seek wisdom. But the key is we have to have discernment as to what qualifies as wisdom. There's this concept of the philosopher's stone, and I know nothing about it. But, in other words, I haven't connected dots with it. You know what I'm saying? But I've just skimmed over, this topic before. And when I just said to you, that discernment is key, supposedly this philosopher's stone is like the key that makes everything else happen, for this huge transformation for a person. And I feel like discernment is that key, which is the gift of the Holy Spirit having that inside, right? But this is where I was going to say we have to discern what qualifies as wisdom, okay? Because wisdom is the principal thing that we need to be able to discern what qualifies as wisdom. And this is where that S in dis comes in, substitutes, okay? Or fake wisdom. So what is that? It's lies. It's lies that look like truth. So I want to share this story with you at this point. I found this little portion here from Wikipedia that talks about Hermes again. It's really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. Okay, so when I was talking about fake wisdom, what is that? It's lies. It's lies. And so I was reminded of the Greek instrument associated with Hermes, which is the lyre, L-Y-R-E. So I looked it up on Wikipedia here, and I just want to read this to you. It says, according to ancient Greek mythology, the young god Hermes stole a herd of sacred cows from Apollo. In order not to be followed, he made shoes for the cows which were facing backwards, making it appear that the animals had walked in the opposite direction. Apollo, following the trails, could not follow where the cows were going. You see how he created confusion here, right? Along the way, Hermes slaughtered one of the cows and offered all but the entrails to the gods. From the entrails and a tortoise or turtle shell, he created the lyre. Apollo, figuring out it was Hermes who had his cows, confronted the young god. Apollo was furious, but after hearing the sound of the lyre, his anger faded. Apollo offered to trade the herd of cattle for the lyre. Hence, the creation of the lyre is attributed to Hermes. Other sources credit it to Apollo himself. So I thought that was really interesting. And if you look up Hermes on the Merriam-Webster dictionary online, he's described as the god of commerce, eloquence, travel, I forget what else, but at the end it says, and theft. Yep. So really interesting, huh? So I just wanted to share that with you. So if what I shared with you from Wikipedia is not thought-provoking with regards to symbolism, I don't know what is. It's like when I read that, it just kind of touched this place like deep in my awareness, like, okay, there's some serious dots trying to connect right now. You know what I'm saying? But I want to sit with it more. But I had to share that with you. Yes. So, and I also think that it's interesting that this musical instrument, called the lyre, L-Y-R-E, is similar to the word lure, right? L-U-R-E, which, that's what happened. He was able to manipulate Apollo's mind with the melody from that musical instrument. I think there's a character, Pan, too, who plays the flutes, right? And it's all about, manipulating the mind, right? So something to think about. So remember dis, D-I-S, right? When being on the lookout for the enemy, right? Not people. When I say the enemy, it's not people. It's the spirit of darkness in all the ways it manifests, okay? So as far as D, meaning distraction, okay, I'll share with you my thoughts. If you think about how much attention is given to negativity, like in the news and TV shows and movies and music, and which music, that one right there is really, okay, we were just talking about the instrument, how Hermes gets Apollo to accept something that he shouldn't have accepted. So then I want you to think about our music today. And, the melody sounds great. The beat sounds good. But what are they saying? Some of the stuff that's actually being said is awful. When you say negativity, that just doesn't do it justice. You know what I mean? It's mind-blowing when you think about it. It's depressing. It stirs up all kind of self-defeating feelings and therefore behaviors that stem from overinflated arrogance, because it's like strumming the tune that the ego likes. And the ego is what? The ego is self-destructive. So it's still doing the work of the darkness. And we're being tempted and lured into self-sabotaging, self-betrayal, like we were just talking about. Yes, a lot of music appeals to that. But also, here's another distraction you may not have thought about. I hadn't until recently. I feel like the darkness intentionally keeps people stuck in their traumas, keeping people busy on this wheel of rumination, regret, confusion. Okay? Why? Because people are made to believe that they are the problem. Sometimes we're made to believe we're the problem. Okay? And the reason nothing that we do to try and improve ourselves works is because we aren't the problem. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes you have so much love inside of you that there's that old saying, love is blind. We don't want to blame someone in front of us because we love them. And that keeps us blind to them being the one playing the flute, making us think it's ourselves. So we work and work and work and work and work on ourselves, but nothing ever improves, right? We keep getting bad results, bad feedback from someone or people. That's because we're not the problem. You know, sometimes we are, but sometimes we're not, you know. So labels, we were talking in the last video about labels, I think. Labels can do that to us, okay? Can keep us stuck thinking we're the problem, that no matter what we try to do, we can't fix it because we're not really the problem. Okay? So sometimes labels can do this. Not always, but they can. All right? So what can we identify as the end goal of these tactics of the darkness? To distract, the D part, ignorance, to keep us ignorant, and to push substitutes out there, false truths, falsehoods, disguised as truths. What can we identify as the end goal of those tactics from the darkness, okay? There's clearly an important threat to the darkness. It's like, what is it? So if we, again, this is very helpful to change our perspective, okay? If we mirror this and flip it to see the inverse to darkness, it's the light. The light is the threat. Where does the light reside? Inside of us. What does it do? It animates you, it motivates you, it sustains you, it guides you. So John chapter 16 verses 7 and 8 explain that the Holy Spirit convicts the world. Now you're starting to see the threat, right? Acts chapter 1 verse 8 says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses to the ends of the earth. It's called the Spirit of Truth for a reason. Truth destroys lies. It exposes lies, and lies are the tool of the devil. Because of those with a mindset of lack, okay, they operate in lies, okay? They think they have to bind up the competition to keep everything for themselves when they're operating in this lack mindset. But the joke's on them. I want to leave you with this, okay? Because even they are being deceived, if you think about it, by the lie of limitations. Again, they're operating from this mindset of lack. They feel like they have to bind us up and keep us stuck, confused, and self-betrayal, right? And all because they want to keep it all for themselves. They want the power all for themselves, okay? Because the Holy Spirit is what empowers us. But you have to understand and have peace in this. Let this bring peace to you, okay? That the joke is on them. Because even they are being deceived by the lie of limitations, okay? But it turns into their reality because only with God are all things possible. There's no limitations with God, and they're not operating with God. They're operating through the darkness. So there we have the truth with regards to limitations, and those who have God in their hearts and on their side. So I hope this brings you some encouragement, inspiration. I hope that it got the wheels turning for you today. I hope it was really interesting for you. I thank you for coming along to hear the message, and I will see you again very soon. Have a beautiful day. Oh, and I need to tell you guys, my schedule is going to be a little different going forward. I've just got some things I'm working out, and so I will still be putting videos up, but it's not going to be the regular days that I was doing before, but I will be putting videos up probably between 3 and 5 a week. That's my goal. So thanks again, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you soon.